About that. There are exceptions for emergency, special needs, and that sort of thing. But that's why you get the agenda a little bit ahead of time and all that sort of thing. And in short, any advisory committee members cannot meet outside of a Brown Act compliant meeting to discuss business. So, say Pete calls you up and says, let's have a glass of wine, you're cruising by, you see him, you sit down, or and you say, hey, let's talk about that meeting. That'd be a violation of the Brown Act. So if you see each other in public, probably best just to say hi and let it be at that. There are a couple of exceptions, and here are the exceptions right here. Other standing, I think this was a question just asked. Attendance by more than a quorum of members is allowed, provided a majority of the members do not discuss business. So standing committee members, other members may attend. You may go to other meetings of governing bodies, so you could come to a board meeting or an MGA meeting. Community meetings that are open and publicized. So we do this water fair once a year or every 2 years with the county, and so if you were to show up to that, social events or conferences are also exempt from that. This is kind of the heart of it, where people usually can get in trouble. And that is this daisy chain and hub and spoke. So remember, if you go back to the essence of this, the Brown Act, that is that the discussion and decisions are made in full transparency. So the public can have the opportunity to critique, criticize, do whatever they want to do in their allotted time. So what way people have gotten in trouble in the past or could in the future is daisy chain or hub and spoke. So, Marion, if you talk to Ken, let's say, take Larry off the hook. Now Larry talks to, Ken talks to Larry, that's the daisy chain, right? You can't do that. And the other one is, and then go down the line, because you're conveying that same information. You're saying, hey, I'm going to vote X on this item, and then you start to get a quorum or that sort of thing.
Or even if you have a discussion on a particular thing. It may not even say, I'm going to vote this way, but well, what do you think of option A or option B? Then if you have a discussion with me and then I have a discussion with him, either verbally or even if you email somebody and, then the email goes around somewhere else and then comes back to him. And then he sees the email about our discussion. Even if it went through some other parties, that's still a daisy chain.
Yeah.
So you have to be real careful about ever discussing anything that's germane to whatever you're going to decide here. Because if you do, and then it goes to the third person, then it's the violation.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that a little. There's other ways that can happen. I'm glad you brought that up, Ken, the way things can just morph out there. We'll touch on that in a second.
So as I was going through yesterday, all of the next door comments on things, and there was
we're going to talk. Let's hold that because that's right where we're going to go. Right. I do want to touch on that. The hub and spoke is the other way, and I would think the most. That's if one person's in the center, so to speak, and I'll use the general manager as the example. If I spoke to one board member, one of y'all, and then came back and then talked to the other, conveying what the other ones had said, kind of act as a center, just wheeling information, that would be another way you could violate the Brown Act. So, or if somebody took it upon themselves to be the center of that. So this gets to exactly what you were saying, and Ken too. Email prohibited to use to develop a collective concurrence. So let's say usually if I ever send anything out to all the board members, it's a do not reply all, or sometimes we'll even do it blind copy, so it's impossible, so they don't hear what each other's saying. I can hear it, or the general manager can. But I can't cross-filter that. The other way, and this is exactly where you're going, where it's becoming an issue today, let's say, Pete, you go, I think somebody, we should vote X, and you post that to your Facebook. I know you've got a lot of followers on your Facebook, and then you look at that, and then, boom, we're in trouble.
And share it.
Yeah, and share it. And then I go on and hit a like, and Christine chimes in, although we're just staff. But you can see where it could get in trouble. So don't want to do that. A couple extra things we want to focus on here, and this is just a primer. Let's see, rules for teleconference noted on the agenda. So if somebody was to call in or you want to attend this by phone, please let me know as far ahead of time as you can, because we have to list this on the agenda. Say Ken's going to call in from X place, and you actually have to post on the door and leave your door open.
Yeah.
You know, closed sessions. This is special allowances for discussion of personnel issues, property negotiations. We shouldn't need that. Public comment, allow for a place for items on and not on the agenda. So that's the way an agenda usually works and the way you saw it here. Disruptive attendees. This is an interesting one. You got to allow for a lot of negative comment. You can even, and Carla, I'm not sure how aware you are of this, but even to the point of, you know, people can curse and things like that. You just best to give them a lot of leeway. The best way to look at this is if they're really disrupting the meeting, then you can stop the meeting. So hopefully we never need to go there. Honorable mention, this is not to do with the Brown Act, but it's important to know that we have kind of, district per se doesn't follow a specific procedure, but there's parliamentary procedures, different types of ways you can do this. There's certain formats, and that's the publishing of the agenda, who, you know, a board member calls to order the meeting, that sort of thing. And then the other one is the public records request. This is California on a federal level. It's, was it FIA or federal?
FOIA.
FOIA, thank you.
It's called FOIA.
Yeah, FOIA. And so, again, going back to that concept of we work for the people, the people can do a public records request and request basically any communications that's not draft, because draft is, you know, you're evolving it there, but communications, reports, emails, text, anything they want, and a few things are off limits, but so beware. If you shoot around an email or anything, everything's pretty much free game, and don't do anything you don't want on the front page. You know, that's not, that's inappropriate. So I just want to make sure, and we live by that. So, any questions? Yes?
Yeah, I've got one more comment. So sometimes, you know, a member of the committee doesn't understand something, so they talk to the staff person who's running that committee. And if you do talk to the staff person who's running the committee about something you don't understand, it's good just to ask for clarification of the point that you don't understand. It's not a good practice to engage in like a policy discussion, you know, where I think that A is better or B is better or something to that effect. If you do engage in a policy discussion, you know, of something, then if that staff person then speaks to another member in any way regarding a policy statement, then you've sort of gone back to the daisy chain issue of communicating serially with, you know, 2 or more, 3 members. So it's good just to confine your questions about agendas and things in this agenda, especially if it's a written thing that you've got a staff report. You just ask the person who's running the meeting, you know, for clarification, but don't really engage in a policy discussion. Then if you just ask for clarification, you're pretty safe. But if you do start talking about, well, what about this, or is that better, or this better, or what does that cost more, then you're starting to tread on water that's a little more iffy.
Yeah, and I think a splay off that is oftentimes we'll get, usually as a member of the public, we'll ask a question that's one off of the topic. We're presenting topics. So say it was public records request day and somebody asked about, well, what about if you keep documents like this? The public can make any comment they want. It's not a question and response period. And the reason for that is to protect the public from some decision being discussed that's not on the agenda and that somebody might have wanted to come and hear about that topic, right? So if somebody asks me today, or asked Carla today, what about, thinking about something that's not on the agenda, conservation and demand projections. You know, really, you shouldn't, well, we're gonna look at that in the future. That'd probably be the extent of the comment you'd probably want to apply, versus, well, we're doing this and this because now we've talked about something that wasn't on the agenda, which is a violation of the Brown Act, and because it doesn't give the public the opportunity to come and comment on it, they didn't even know it was gonna be talked about. So that kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with what you're talking about. So that's the first item. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to, because I was running for re-election now, I've had one term here almost, we're slating, but we are running completely separate campaigns for that very reason.
Oh, I see, you're no longer a slate, so to speak.
Yeah, we're not really a slate, we were just trying to share costs on some of the campaign expenses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's the extent of the collaboration. So but that's been ever present in our minds.
Was there a new legal opinion regarding that? You know, running as slates as, 3 or 4 candidates running as a...
I know people do it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was a new legal opinion that had come out, you know.
No.
Oh, okay.
And let me say, this, we have a person filming, as you can see here. You may not be used to that. It is the public right to film public meetings, so just want to make everybody aware of that. So Becky and Gary over here, Becky's filming. So just, you know, there might be something that is unusual to you as a member of the public.
So okay. Does anybody else have any questions about it, or are there any comments from the audience?
I do. Becky Steinbrunner. It's my understanding of the Brown Act that regarding public input, to encourage, the Brown Act is set to encourage public input, and that the body has a choice of 3 things they can do when a member of the public brings a question or request for clarification. That they can briefly clarify an issue. They can refer the member of the public to a staff person to help them get their answer, or they can elect to put it on the agenda for future public discussion. So it doesn't mean that you just don't even acknowledge anything they've said. It's quite the opposite. The Brown Act is meant to encourage public input by allowing for those 3 things. I also wanted to ask if this body or any other board is required to declare ex parte communication for transparency, and what rules of order does this group or the board use, and also what's the policy regarding public comment regarding closed session?
I'll answer the last one first. That's easy because this will never be part of a closed session.
Yeah.
So it's not really relevant to discuss that right now. That's before the full board meeting.
Okay.
Having run meetings previously that were not public institutions, but they were government institutions, we ran the Robert rules. That was how I ran meetings. And there was public input, and there was comments at the specific times. But I don't know whether that's a regulation or not. I think that each committee is permitted to set their own rules for participation.
In regards to closed session, the public can comment on the item before it goes into closed session. So that's how that the law states that.
Mm-hmm. And the issue of ex parte?
I'm not sure about that.
I don't either. I can't comment on that. Perhaps Bob Basso in the full meeting could probably be able to figure that one out for us.
Okay.
Do you know? I mean, what do you mean by that?
I've just learned a little bit because the county's commissions used to not declare it, only the county planning commission would. And recently, other commissions have been asked to declare ex parte communication because they are quasi-judicial in that they make decisions that advise the board on policy. So they require.
Thank you, yeah, I'm not sure that.
And I just
resonates
wondered if
for
this
me.
board, if this standing committee is abiding to those rules as well.
I'm not sure it's relevant, actually, but we'll definitely look into it.
Okay, thank you.
So, you ready to go on
Oh, yeah, I
item
guess
two?
we'll continue.
We're in good shape.
Yeah.
So, this is also meant to give you a little primer on really the water in the area, since some of you are new, and if you're not, it'll give you a little background. So, in Santa Cruz, first of all, 80% of it is groundwater and 20% is surface water, and we use about 86,000 acre feet a year. Acre foot is a football field, 1 acre foot deep in water, and this is where I'm going to try something for you, although I forgot my stats on this. Let's see, how would I make this smaller? 15.
Press the escape button.
Okay, that's always a good one. Okay, perfect. Let me see if I can go down here. I got something, a little treat for you if I can get it to work. And the problem is,
Surface water.
here we go.
Wow.
Looks like Niagara. Is it Niagara?
It is.
Yeah.
It is Niagara, and I'm going to show you that again because what I'm going to equate this to, although I can't exactly remember the statistic, but I'll give it a wag with the idea that you. Let's see how can we equate it.
Sometimes you can just go to the far left and double
Click on
click,
the line, yeah.
you know, like there, and then maybe double click.
You know, the problem is I'm left-handed. I got a left-handed mouse. I'm trying to do this right-handed. Let's see here. Well, you saw
Play
it.
button doesn't work.
Which one?
The play in the middle.
That one, yeah.
That play mode might work.
Oh, that one?
So this is Niagara Falls. I was actually there on a vacation a couple of years ago. So looking at all that water, that's the key. And I may be wrong, so please nobody quote me on my statistic, but I think, if I remember right, it's 140 minutes of this flow is equal to what the agency pumps in a year. And it's like 10.5 hours what the county pumps. So I'm just trying to give you a visual. Imagine 140 minutes, and I can verify that, but give you, because it's hard to go, how much water are we really using? You been to Niagara?
Yeah.
It's cool, huh?
Yeah.
Has anybody else been there? It's free. I was expecting to be. Yeah, I think that's what we went out on.
Put on the yellow duck suit.
Yeah.
So you can actually go on a boat on the bottom?
Yeah, you
Oh,
can.
yeah.
Go up behind it too, right?
Yeah.
And-
Stairways or whatever.
yeah, the sound is like.
Yeah.
That must be kind of
The
exciting.
Marilyn Monroe movie.
I didn't see.
Had him on the boat.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh.
It's. I think it's worthwhile. I don't know how the rest of y'all felt, but it impressed me more than I thought. The point of showing you this is that Santa Cruz is really the kind of the odd bird out, although they get all the press and we're Santa Cruz centric. The county uses mainly groundwater, and of course most of this is down in the Pajaro region. They pump the majority. And you can see how it's broken out, ag, residential. So just a little fun fact there. Let's see. So the real nemesis of what we're facing is seawater intrusion. And if you don't know what that is, this slide is meant to illustrate that. So the image up top, the thing to watch is the well in the middle, and this diagram needs a little fixing, but you can see the water level in the well is above the ocean. So when, let's see, is this right? So when that well is pulling in water, you can see it's pulling in blue fresh water up there, and there's still water going out to the ocean, right? Now, when we go to the low when you can see the water level in the well has gone down, it's lower than the ocean, and you start to pull in the ocean. So that is a graphical depiction of a healthy aquifer and one that's being seawater intrusion. And that lies the heart of the problem that we're trying to avoid, because it has been going on for a while. We've overdrafted the aquifer since the 80s. Here's a map. This is our service area here in black. There's a little no-man zone here. These are chloride concentrations, so seawater detected in these wells. And 250 is the limit that you, secondary drinking water limit that's allowed. So we're okay here, but here we have, you know, many times, at least 5 times, if not, I don't know, 20 times above that. And then here, this water's like almost to seawater in some areas.
And those are monitoring wells?
These are monitoring wells on land that have been detected seawater over time.
So those are district monitoring wells?
Those are district monitoring wells. They look big, they're just to show you.
Yeah.
These other little dots are private wells.
So
There may be
the
others.
one in Live Oak, those are city monitoring
Yeah.
wells?
This means water well. This is a city, well, this is one of our water wells. And yeah, this is a city monitoring well. These are our monitoring wells.
Do you have any other ones further inland?
We have about-
Red ones that are
We,
shown, but, you know, that are, exist, that you use, but that are, you know, not over? Do you have like a line?
we
Where
do, we
the
have.
good and the bad is,
Well,
so to speak?
this is what we call our Sentry wells, and Christine's the one in charge of monitoring, having these all monitored. I think we have, what, 80
About 80.
monitoring wells in the district.
Yeah. That must
So-
be nice to see what's good and what's bad.
Yeah.
Just the line, so to speak.
Well, the question we've always had is, we know we have it on shore here, and we detect it a little bit here. Where is the seawater out here, right? And remember, the seawater is in the aquifers out below the ocean, or it can be freshwater out there, and then as you pump more inland, it gets pulled in like we showed on that diagram. So the question was always, where is the, I didn't know this was animated, this is great. Is the seawater where we don't detect it on shore, is it here? Is it here, out here in the bay? And I actually would have put my money on this, my own calculations. Or is it out further? Because if it's way out here, we have a lot more time before it could get in and hit our wells. When we were pumping in, I don't know, about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, if it was here, the hydrologists calculated it was just a matter of a couple of years before it would decimate these wells. So when we saw that, we quickly started trying to move wells inland and pump, because the further inland you move, the less draw they have on the ocean and everything. Now, I don't have a picture of this, but that helicopter that's up over here in that picture, they flew out over the ocean here, and folks from Denmark, and had a way to look beneath the ocean and see where is the fresh water coming out way out here, or is it seawater in the aquifers below here? And basically what they found is that the seawater's right at the shore. So it was great in the sense that they were able to detect that. It was not so good in the sense of the location of it. It's about the worst case scenario you could get without being on shore. So.
It was like, what, 100 meters down too?
Yeah, it's right in the zone. There's different zones, and we're going to get to that in just a second, because that's an important component that Carla mentions, is that you're looking at a 2D map. We've really got a 3-dimensional model going on here with different layers. I think that's the next slide, but it's in the zones, you know, some of our primary pumping zones and other ones. So that's that. And
Did you want to mention the 2 different aquifers?
I do, and I'm wondering. I passed over this. Okay, so this is great, and I have another map. I think makes it easier for you to understand.
It's over here.
Oh, okay, thank you. So let me start with this one before you look at the one that's up there, and I'll come up to the front to make it easier. Excuse me. So, you know, geology. I love geology, and let me first say all these maps are a little bit skewed because what you're doing is taking a long area and you're compressing it like this, so the dips that you see aren't as dramatic. Things don't slant this much, they're much more horizontal. What we have is a bunch of pancake layers in the Prisma, and help me out, Larry, if I missed something, that are basically, and I have an example in my office, anybody after the meeting wants to see it, but it's layers of silt and sand, maybe a little bit of gravel. They can be, 150 feet thick down to a few feet thick, that some are more transmittive water and less. But, so imagine, you go down 30, 40 feet, you hit a clay layer, and then maybe that's 10 feet thick, and then you go down, you hit another aquifer zone. So I like to call it pancake hydrology. And then over here is the aromatous red sands. It's in its own different category. That's basically like a giant sandbox. That it's not layered so much. It's just aromatous red sands. Anybody gone up into Soquel High? And the best place I can think about is that bluff as you go up where they play frisbee. It's all kind of reddish and sandy. That's the aromatous red sands. If you go out to Pleasure Point, that's this stuff, or Capitola, and you look back at the cliffs. Sometimes you see water flowing out on one of the layers of the cliff, so that water's come down, infiltrated down, hit a less permeable layer, and then gone horizontal. So here is what it looks like. Larry, can I get you to
Yeah,
give me a hand here? So I think Mike Cloud, a local hydrologist, hydrologist, did this, but this is the Mid-County Basin. This is the area you're concerned about. So you can see the Prisma formations, and I forget the ages of this. It's T, so tertiary.
Well, tertiary, it's tertiary.
Yeah, what is that? I have acronyms in my head. I have to go back to
The
graduate
aromatous
school.
is quaternary.
Yeah, so this is younger because it's deposited on top, so that makes sense, right? And this is older. Anybody been out? This is bedrock. This is a granite, a kind of a peppered granite. Anybody been to the quarry up out Olive Springs, Gordon? Have you ever wondered why the heck there's a quarry up there and they're mining granite? It's because this granite bedrock has made its way up there and extruded, and then it does it over here too. There's some faulting going on, but that kind of gives you an idea. And this is what's called a cross-sectional view.
Right, that's what this black one
Yeah,
is.
so it's this and a slice vertically through the earth to give it to you. So Scotts Valley is over here, and that's why we kind of refer to it as more as a bathtub basin, because it's confined by some faults. And then over here, I had when I was a consultant, a geologist, senior geologist, I remember him telling me his grandmother had a well in Scotts Valley, and it went dry, and then because he was a geologist, he realized there was a fault there, and then went about 30 yards up the property, drilled on the other side of the fault, and the water had come down and impounded behind it, so there was a lot of water. So I always remember that, because I didn't live in Santa Cruz at the time. So it's a simple, thank you. Any questions on that? Is that, it's the thing that makes it complicated are the layers and connected to the ocean in this aquifer. And it makes it I'd say, a really hard to deal with basin. And I have, my background when I was a consultant was in hydrology. So let's see. So that's...
Could I ask how far inland has it been found?
The seawater intrusion?
Yeah.
Well, I believe you're right around, probably about right here. And now we should enlarge that dot, or where are you, right down here? Yeah, we serve you, so you must be right here. It's not inland, it's basically inland as far as you see it right here. Now what I don't have showing you is, I didn't want to scare you too much, but there's another map we have that shows down to Pajaro Valley and down to Salinas. And what you would see there is this seawater intrusion wedge getting wider, 3 miles inland. Here, Gary, he's seen that map quite a few times probably. Inland down at Pajaro, and then when we get down to Monterey, it's all the way into Salinas. And I have maps and maps. We actually have a file that's called the Seawater Intrusion, and it shows some great maps of like in Florida, the fronts moving over time, or other parts of the world. I mean, you can't name a place that's populated probably that uses groundwater that doesn't have seawater intrusion. About 70% of the populated coastal regions of the world have seawater intrusion. Long Island, Florida, and you can go you know, around the world to France and wherever. It's ubiquitous, because it's hard, very, very hard to stop. Most places that have tried have failed. It's underground, it moves slow, people think they have time. It's hideous. Politically, it's easy to dodge, you know, you just because it moves so slow. A lot of reasons for it to happen. You know, this is, if I say we're raising the flag on anything at Soquel Creek, and Carla, correct me if you think I'm wrong, or Christine, it's, you know, to stop seawater intrusion, because once that happens, you pretty much, you know, ruin the aquifer, and you know, you ruin that space of aquifer probably for a very long time for the current people or for future generations. So that's what our whole infrastructure and wells and supplemental supplies is all about. There's probably, I think, 150 miles of pipe throughout the district that carries the water from Vance. I think that's important. All different ages. We have naturally occurring issues besides seawater intrusion, chromium-6, some arsenic, some anthropogenic stuff. TCP, something like that?
TCP,
TCP.
nitrates.
Nitrates, right, right, ammonia.
Iron,
Iron, manganese. So those are natural, those two. But yeah. So my intent today was just to give you an overview of the Brown Act, which we did, and then go to the hydrology. And actually, we skipped 3.2. I jumped the gun on that, so I'll go back to that. If you're,
Oh, yeah. That's right. Well, that's good. Well, it's probably better to do the groundwater first.
yeah, it gives you a little setting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we're talking about 3.2, the update on community water plans, which you all might have heard a little bit about.
Yeah. I didn't know if there were any questions. Did you want to? Are we good?
Oh, any questions on hydrology discussion?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you. How did the Danish helicopter study done in, was it 2017? How did that compare with the 2014 results of Dr. Rosemary Knight that did the actual beach survey in 2014? Did it correlate?
Very well. That's what kind of...
Because I don't remember seeing any of her work saying that it was at the beach in those areas.
Well, she couldn't make that determination because it is 100 meters down.
Uh-huh.
So she's at surface.
So this isn't a reading at the beach per se, but slightly offshore. Is that what you're
The
saying?
helicopter could not fly over the beach.
Yeah.
The collaboration and correlation is, you know, supported.
Thank you.
Very supported.
And my second question was the chloride level increase at the Pleasure Point well, monitoring well. When did that show up, and does it correlate at all with Santa Cruz City's Belts well production?
Forget when it showed up, and yeah, I think all this is related to pumping. That's the nemesis. So when they cut back on pumping, I think the levels, and like we moved wells inland and stopped pumping down south, is part of the whole approach to slow it down. But water levels are still below they're not high enough even today, even though we have stage 3 curtailment for the last 5 years. Our people have done tremendous cutbacks. I mean, it kills me every day I go by, I think it's a little school in Capitola there. We don't allow them to irrigate a field right next to J Street Park. It's a dirt field, you know. They didn't WDO it and they can't water it. So there's a lot of duress. I don't know how long we can hold that. You can see things starting to inch up, and they certainly, water consumption's inched up in other areas. So as that happens, we're kind of in a race to mitigate that with supply projects that we have on, which is really the next topic.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to 3.2.
Yeah. So Christine, jump in on, I'll frame it, and we can tag team this one, okay? Usually we'd have other staff people present on some of this. I normally don't cover this much ground, but we're so booked right now that they were back there getting work done. So Christine and I offered up to take this. So the community water plan, there's a book. Gary, can you hand me that book beside you, please? Yeah, one of those. This is a little bit out of date, probably. Well, it says 2017, so you know it's hard to update. But this is kind of the other. If seawater intrusions are nemesis, this is our fix or blessing, you know. And what it is, it's the plan. We worked 14 months with community members on this to come up with a plan, a strategy to solve the issue, prevent further seawater intrusion. And these icons represent several different ways. We have on there conservation, which our rate consultant said we have the lowest usages in the state of California overnight. I think besides San Francisco, that might be true. So conservation, well management, moving those wells back, and our engineering and Christine have done a great part of that, a great yeoman's job, because I think it gets underestimated. It sounds like, oh, you're just moving a well, that's not a big deal, but it makes a huge impact. We got a lot of data to show that. And the other icons, that won't get us there, are supplemental supplies. So river transfers is one, and you may have heard about a small 300 acre foot year, which is about 20% of the problem we're facing, transfer with the city of Santa Cruz. We signed a MOU with them a couple years ago. It's taken that long. Christine's been working every week on this thing, and people collecting samples to see if their water coming to us is compatible with our pipes. That study done by Mark Edwards, who did Flint, Michigan, showed that, yeah, it looks pretty good. Maybe tweak a few things here and there, but it looks good. So if the conditions are met on that contract, we'll be receiving water, and if we can get our permit, and there's a few other small things, but it's looking pretty good. If the rains come, we'll get that water and test it. And what was some of the, what did Tosh say today? A little more update on that?
We're going to, we have isolated a portion of our distribution system as of today, and that is going to be receiving the actual surface water. We need to start monitoring that for 4 weeks prior to when we receive the water. And hopefully monitoring may start as early as next week.
You got to pre-monitor, right?
Yeah.
Pre-monitor, then monitor during, and then we monitor the zone for 3 months after receiving the surface water.
And what does the monitoring consist of?
It's 3 locations in the, this is all proposed with the state right now, so
Okay.
it's a pretty conservative plan that we've proposed, so I don't think it's gonna vary too much from that. 3 distribution system locations, and then plus monitoring at the intertie when the intertie is open. And we're monitoring for chlorine residuals, pH, temperature, all 17 different metals, disinfection byproducts, oxidation reduction potential.
Yeah, there were a number of entities besides Flint, which was actually surface water to surface water, wasn't even groundwater, surface water. Arizona had happened. I mean, Christine's brought me a couple of examples of where things went sideways and said, please don't let this happen to us. So we've I think even where they fired the operations and GM managers, that caught my eye. But more importantly, I know in Arizona it came out blood red, and they had a big project. They sunk millions of dollars, millions and millions in that, just because they didn't take their time to try to do it right. Because you can imagine, you do it wrong, step incorrectly, it can pretty much ruin a project like that in future volumes. And the idea is that if that works out and Santa Cruz can get water rights, change the place of use, then more water can come and we can get more water.
I know that it's a somewhat arbitrary amount of water that is part of the original agreement, this pilot agreement, so it's at a very beneficial rate, a cost.
Oh, the cost, yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of factors, a lot of new decisions and studies that will be done before a larger plan could ever
Yeah, the cost
be
is
expanded.
We worked that because Santa Cruz wanted to make it happen. We wanted to make it happen. It was important to get the testing. But because it's a pilot, they could do it up based on their marginal cost, just produce the next unit of water, which is only about $175 an acre foot, somewhere around that range. But when they go, if we do get more water arrangements, we'll have to adhere to Prop 218. That says you gotta charge, whoever you gotta charge them the true cost. You can't subsidize. You can't give us water and charge your people more, or vice versa.
So do you have a phased program, so to speak, that, up to this level, you and Santa Cruz are in agreement per se, and then between that level and another level, you might have some ideas, but you're not completely sure, but you ought to evaluate, and then maybe there's a third or fourth level that
Levels
you've
of
looked
what,
at.
amounts?
Amounts of water, and then what's entailed, both financially for Santa Cruz and yourselves, as well as even, reverse flows, so that you have stuff falling off the pipes and all that kind of business. So I don't know if you have levels identified that Santa Cruz believes they might have at as a maximum so much water, and in your pilot level might be a smaller portion of that, and there might be other steps in between what perhaps Santa Cruz considers to be their maximum and what your minimum pilot is, that there's different increments there, and
Yeah, that's a
that
great
you
question.
have ideas on what those increments are and what's entailed.
So, let me answer that a little bit roundabout way. Go back to, remember, they're all surface water, we're all groundwater, so their problem is totally different, right? Basically, they hurt when it doesn't rain, the creeks and the streams, they pull from 3 small creeks up the coast, and then the sound runs over there. That's the heart of what they do. And when it doesn't rain, they're in a world of hurt. Because we got a groundwater aquifer, we can kind of like limp along a little bit better during a short-term drought, but long-term we get impacted. So everything they've done has been oriented to solve their problem, right? It's not to if they can help the aquifer as a side benefit, they're all for that, they're part of the MGA. But right now, they don't have those numbers that you're asking about, because they're still trying to model what they can put in and take out until they do all that. And they thought they could do it with our basin, or they had that idea, and then they realized they couldn't, and they had to go to Scotts Valley and divide up the two. So they're still in evaluation. They are going to be putting water down in Beltswell here to test the injection recharge rate. I think there's December timeframe.
So Santa Cruz is actually looking at injecting water into their own groundwater basin from their own surface water supply as part of their own internal?
They are on their side, and may be coming to ours. They haven't got that far yet.
Right.
But that is part of the whole basin, that's everybody's basin,
Yeah.
not Santa Cruz's.
Yeah, but sometimes they just think about their side.
Right, and the question is, and this has been brought up, is it's great to fill it up, but they don't want to just fill it up. They want to solve their problem, rightfully so, right? So how much can the basin handle when you pull out? That's one of the big questions. And so we've got modelers. There's a big 3-dimensional numerical model constructed, and it's running all kinds of simulations.
And is that more on the sort of that area, the gray area, which is sort of Santa Cruz's area versus?
It roughly covers the area you're looking at. It's actually a little bit bigger. That to model it, the model boundaries have to be bigger. Nothing goes offshore. So to see interactions and everything. So I forget the exact dimensions, but it's close to what you're looking at.
But Santa Cruz is doing that portion of the model instead of.
Well, it's all one model. It's too much interconnected because
So you have you have one model, and
the
you
model's
have
a whole
different.
thing. Yeah, and they're pumping wells, our pumping wells.
Okay, so you can just use the same model. You're on the same model.
Yeah.
You just have different scenarios that you look at with the same model.
Well, they're different questions too.
Yeah, but it's the same model.
Yeah,
and the
we have
same
one.
basis
We have
and the
one
same
model,
data.
and it's a combination of a surface water and groundwater model. It's a U.S. Geological Survey model, and we're paying for our own model runs. Santa Cruz is paying for its own model runs, and then the Mid-County Groundwater Association
is paying for theirs.
Well, some that work for
Well, that's nice that you can use the same.
And the county
data, the
is
same
too.
model, the same information.
It's coming together. I go to some of the MGA meetings and also the groundwater, the GSP
Right.
subcommittee meetings, really interesting stuff that they talk about, so.
Yeah,
And
and then
then
there's,
occasion to do it, go.
then there's the TAC meetings, they're not open to the public, but it's, you know, just, it's really smart modeling things.
And then as far as like the treatment of the water that potentially would be recharged into the groundwater basins, either more towards the Santa Cruz side or towards the Soquel Creek, you all have discussions with them regarding, you know, it's probably a good idea to go to this potential recycled water for Santa Cruz and this potential for Soquel Creek, and find your commonalities regarding what's the minimum level of treatment you're gonna be looking at for both the two agencies?
I don't know if we've hit on that exactly, and I'm not sure I understand the question, but I will say that, you know, the state has a no degradation policy, so what Santa Cruz has right now needs to be cleaned up more to put down the groundwater basin. So that's why they're investing so much in their infrastructure, right? Disinfection byproducts that are right at the MCL, ours are halfway to the MCL, what is that, THM? So that's why they're investing heavily to, they're going to use carbon and other things to run their surface water through to clean it up. And so they'll bring it up to a good quality, I mean, it's already good, I drink good water, and I'm a customer, but to put it in the groundwater basin, you know, you gotta take it the extra mile.
Yeah.
So, that's all controlled through state, is that your question? I'm not sure I'm hitting.
Well, it's both that on the surface water side and on wastewater treatment.
Yeah, and then the wastewater treatment has a whole nother set of regulations.
Right, so I'm wondering if you all compare with each other, that if you're both looking at groundwater recharge for either surface water and or recycled wastewater, that if you both sort of look at the parameters together jointly, so to speak, that, you know, if it's going in this groundwater basin, we ought to
Need a certain level?
yeah, a certain level of treatment for
Yeah.
wastewater and a certain level of treatment for surface water, so that if we do inject in the same basin or
I'm pretty sure they all have to be treated to the same levels.
They
no matter
have-
what
they-
the source.
Yeah, they have to be treated, actually,
Yeah, recycled water has
much higher levels.
bacteria.
It's actually, I didn't show you here, but I presented this to the NGA. This may get to the heart of what you're talking about. The effluent, the secondary effluent now that goes out to the ocean, 8 million gallons a day, is treated. And actually, it meets the MCLs, at least the testing we did on the maximum contaminant levels that are required by EPA. But it has pathogens in it. Now, hold that for a second, because that's the water that we would treat from secondary to tertiary levels and then purify. That's a process you see here. Everywhere where there's rivers, people take water, the city uses it, treats it to secondary levels and puts it back in the river, and then the next town downstream takes it and treats it to conventional standards and drinks it. That conventional standards relative to what purification recycle process, if you put it back down in the water, you can treat to just conventional standards and put it in the water. It's the same water if you take that, a river's dumping in, but a purification process is 100,000 times more stringent, 100,000 times. And that's just because it's you know, the regulators wanted to be ultra sure. They're actually going to probably use similar criteria to put it directly in the pipe, but what they're going to want is holding time so you can test it more. But we're going to put it down in the ground. That's if we do that project. It'll go down in the ground, stay for a while, and create a seawater barrier. So they've got to meet certain standards when it's pulled out, but the treatment levels are actually more stringent. For the pathogenic stuff is 100,000 times greater, because they do log removal, so you can
And do you happen to know if Santa Cruz, at one time they were looking at, and I don't know where it is, but I do remember seeing a discussion at one point in time, that Santa Cruz has the golf course, and they use well water there, and they were going to go potentially use recycled wastewater there. And I don't know if Santa Cruz is pursuing that
I think
still with Scotts Valley or by themselves, or looking at that they would actually use recycled water at the golf course, and then maybe possibly using their well for some other reason, like water. I think it was De La Vega, and then they were, at one time they were talking to Scotts Valley, that they were gonna, And they were gonna run it through a reverse osmosis filter and potentially use it on the golf course,
Yeah.
and then get some.
And that's probably Pasatiempo, because that line comes down
Yeah.
through there. And they are doing that at Pasatiempo.
Is that
I
still?
think it's something that you'll see emerge. I know in the WASEC process, they really advocated for, at least I thought, the way I remember it, was a portion of their, was tertiary treated water for irrigation. Then they also had, I think, recharge with purified water too, but high in their list was treating water to tertiary standards. And tertiary standards, this will help you if you don't understand all this, we can go ahead and give you a little private session. But that tertiary standards you can put on, what goes out in the ocean secondary, so you basically run it through sand or microfiltration like right here, and that makes it tertiary, okay? That means you can put it on playing fields or organic crops, that it's of that use. Yeah, you're not supposed to drink it or swim in it. And then if you purify it, it goes through reverse osmosis, UV, and there's some other processes you can use. But that's the, Santa Cruz has a different process for their river water. Like I said, some chemicals, I think they're looking at carbon, I thought I saw in their last one, to deal with some of their issues. There is a table that Santa Cruz did that's interesting, that's on their website. They sampled their river water pre and post treatment, our water, and then purified water we took. And you can see those compared to constituents of emerging concern and other things. So it's a little bit illuminating. You see what comes in the river. There's a lot of septic things in the river. So that's their nemesis that they have to live with. And I think they're doing a good job of approaching that.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot.
Yeah, we're already
Yeah.
out, but I'd also say like the city of Santa Rosa is completely committed to using recycled water for, especially tertiary water for all of their parks and golf courses. So they have been at this for ages now, so they.
Redwood City, a lot.
Redwood City too, yeah. So it's old technology.
And let me, so Deepwater Desal, they're behind on their EIR. Cal Ann had a desal project that got accepted, so I'm not sure where that puts Deepwater Desal. I'm trying to round out our other 4 options. And then stormwater recharge, we've been pursuing that, working with a host of teams, people ranging from academics to the Denmark people, and the golf course specifically, and we're back in touch with them with their new owner, so.
Oh, that's good.
It'll be just a little bit, but every little bit helps.
Yeah.
So that kind of wraps up where we're at on the,
So the golf course is still somewhat interested in using some stormwater for recharge?
yeah, we just had a
Yeah.
letter saying from their general manager who they kept on that said the new owners are interested and we'll pursue conversations, so that's really positive.
And then, will they ever be using that, do they take their irrigation water out of wells exclusively now? Do they ever mix it with surface water from their ponds, or not really? They keep their ponds completely separate?
The ponds are filled with their well water,
Oh, I see. And then and their irrigation is just off the well
off the
water?
ponds.
Yeah.
No, off the ponds. They
Right.
Which is
irrigate
off
Oh, so
the
they
pond.
irrigate off the ponds?
Which is from a
Okay.
well.
Right, but they go from the well to the pond, and then they get some surface water, whatever happens to infiltrate in that pond, and then they're irrigating with that. So if you added stormwater, is recycled water looked at as part of supply for the golf course? Added to the
We did
ponds?
look at that. I don't want to get too far over time here.
Sure.
We did look at that. It was a micro unit, like a Mack truck with a
Yeah.
recycle unit. You cut a sewer pipe, you clean it up and irrigate. It was just too expensive, cost breaker.
With the pipeline, has that been looked at all? If
It
you were extending a pipeline from, say, Santa Cruz to here, and then potentially extending it to.
gets
the golf
costly
course.
when you do it just for irrigation purposes.
Mhm.
That's the problem with recycled water. You gotta run a separate pipe.
Recycled water is just the ultimate. That's practically, it's essentially the water that comes out of the These water machine. It's just extremely
No, it's expensive.
expensive.
Yeah.
So that's why you hear people throw out purple piping, they want to, for irrigation and all kinds of functions that are non-potable functions for reuse. Well, let's see, let's go. Well, Any comments, any questions on this? Last thing? Then we're on to 3.5, any reports or any other information from committee members?
Yeah, if you can indulge me for a couple minutes.
Okay.
I went to the Santa Cruz County Fish and Wildlife Advisory Commission meeting. They've always got something going on about water. And so I like to hear that. But there was one thing that they handed out, maybe I can pass this around, is this guy, Tim Gonkaroff, I guess, or Goncharoff. He puts out a list once in a while about, it's a legislative update for the state of California. And I've got a little list here. It's pretty interesting to see what's been signed by the governor, what's due to be signed, things like that. But there's 3 things on there about water. There's Senate Bill 606 and AB 1668 to encourage more efficient water use, better planning, and data collection. There's another one that's SB 1422, which would require testing of drinking water for microplastics. And then AB 2371, which is about water efficient landscaping. So I just wanted to put these out here and pass them around if you want.
And that's one of the things about, we looked at microplastics at RO, actually, I think even microfiltration. No, RO takes those out. So that's a big concern to like save our shores. I met with them. Thank you, Larry, this is great.
There's 3 more bullets here. So apparently the cannabis grow permits is moving along now with the county. And I'm not sure about the city. This is a county. And they actually have hired a couple of sheriff's deputies to go around and make sure there's no illegal grows. I don't know if they're gonna be looking at water issues or not. Another one is that Santa Cruz County is considering hiring a water master for the Soquel Creek adjudication, but they just discussed that. I don't know what exactly they discussed. I remember how difficult it was for San Gregorio Creek to get an adjudication, actually get a water master that could actually go along and enforce the adjudications.
This is like several decades.
That adjudication is, but the water master, I don't, probably.
No, they've never done it.
They're thinking about doing it.
No, they were thinking about contacting the state.
Oh, really? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not, they can't do the water.
Yeah, well, the
State
that,
has
then
to-
forget it. And
Yeah,
then the
so-
last thing that the county was thinking about, because PG&E has got their mandate to keep their above ground power lines clear and free from vegetation and trees. And apparently, since that is given, their authority to do the project is given by the CPU, PUC, Public Utilities Commission, they can circumvent CEQA rules and things like that. So they're concerned about cutting the trees, chopping down redwoods, leaving a 15 or 30-foot wide swath of bare earth along road lines, near creeks, things like that. So, not really going to impact the groundwater, but it might be good. And they're trying to get PG&E to work with the county rules, and I think they want to cooperate. But you might have some trees you want saved along some of your
Yeah, the,
infrastructure right-of-ways and things like that.
yeah,
So,
up there in Santa Rosa, they're all pitchforking about getting the trees away from the
Yeah.
power lines.
there's new technology that he talked about where it can give you like an instantaneous shut-off to between power poles, things like that.
Or they get underground the poles too.
Undergroundable in areas that aren't subject to slides and flooding and
Yeah,
things like that.
exactly.
So that's gonna take time though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm done.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so generally we're gonna ask for more participation and ideas. So this meeting again was to get you at a baseline for, some of you are already there.
And what's the next meeting? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, sure. I
I
think
think
it's on the end of the
December
agenda.
11th.
December 11th?
Yeah, it's at the bottom of that agenda there.
Oh, it is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. That's nice to put it there.
Yeah, helps all this shit.
Right here, 4 p.m.
Yeah, same back channel.
So, this would, I think we still have a minute for one more item, that's the requesting, are there any issues you'd like to bring up for discussion at this meeting? Any questions you have, further questions that you'd like to take up?
And you can email them too, Larry does occasionally.
Actually, I'm kind of curious about, Santa Cruz and yourselves, and in particular, as far as reverse osmosis goes, or that portion of the treatment train on the wastewater or highly purified wastewater.
Mhm.
If you and Santa Cruz would do that jointly, or even if Santa Cruz was not interested in doing it jointly, if you would be paying for that portion, and just when you do your cost analysis, compare looking at Soquel Creek paying for the reverse osmosis portion, either jointly with Santa Cruz or as themselves, but having located at the Santa Cruz plant. Either potentially as a single story or even a second story structure if you build a steel structure. So that if there's a space constraint out there at Santa Cruz wastewater plant, if you put the reverse osmosis filters on a steel structure on a second story.
Yeah, and that's actually in the feasibility study.
Yeah, so if you just, if you're in your discussions with Santa Cruz, because the reverse osmosis has those return flows which are problematic to deal with. So that if Soquel Creek does that over here and you have to return the flows back to Santa Cruz, it's a real problem. And then also, because if you only have to do disinfection or some sort of other process after reverse osmosis, that's not that difficult to do individually. Whereas if you try to do reverse osmosis by yourselves and then have return flows to Santa Cruz, it's more of a problem. It's also expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I guess that calls, the adjournment is called for. After 5 o'clock.
Thank you all.
A little
Thanks for
bit,
saying
but
that.
not too bad.
Yeah,
Not too bad.
so I hope that was